Welcome, everybody. Good morning, Beatrice. How are you today?
Good morning. Very well, thank you, Tom. How are you?
Good, doing well. The sun's back out in Ireland and everything is good. Welcome to all of our viewers. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for you. And welcome to Coaches Unleashed. This is the show where we talk about how everyday people can get life-changing results through coaching. Today, we're going to talk about intergenerational leadership and intergenerational teams. It's quite a unique situation that the world finds itself in at the moment. And Beatrice, tell us a bit more about the challenge that we face.
Yes, so I had recently one of my coachees come to coaching. They're a leader and they have a very diverse team. So their team goes from 24-year-olds all the way up to a 62-year-old. And he was saying how he is finding it quite challenging managing a team that is so diverse. And so, you know, this I thought could be useful because indeed we find that we are now 5 generations in the workplace. So we've got the traditionalists, or also known as the silent generation, and they're born between 1925 and 1945. We've got the baby boomers that were born between 1946 and 1964. We've got Generation X, so between 1965 and 1990. The millennials, also known as zillennials, you were saying, between 1981 and 1996. And then the last generation that's come onto the into the workforce, which is the Generation Z, the 1997 to 2012. So the real digital natives.
The zillennials are the ones that's kind of between, the people who kind of fall somewhere between Z and millennial. So
right.
Yeah.
So
that's me. Yeah, right at the cusp. Yeah. So apparently they need another one. There weren't enough already. So, put another one in. Yeah.
So you're a zillennial then. Okay.
Yes. So apparently so. Yeah. So yeah, no, where digital has always been a thing, but we also remember the days of dial-up broadband at home and overhead projectors at school and paper. So yeah, a bit of both, but yeah.
Well, I'm a Generation X, so I started working in 1994, and I remember that back then we had one computer. You know, I was working in a big team of about 20 people. We have one computer in the middle of the room, and, you know, email would come for everybody to look at on that one computer. And we still had the fax machine. And then very quickly, we thought we were really modern because we were able to actually send documents without faxing them through, but by sending them directly from the computer, and it would go onto the client's fax wherever they were. That was quite clever. But we still had landlines and fax machines, yes, and the slides. I mean, I remember the slides. At the time, I was working in consulting, and when we had a client delivery, which was often, you know, outside of Europe, in the US or in Asia, I would have to travel with this thick sort of 2-inch deck of slides with tissue paper between each slide. And they were actually hand drawn. They were not printed out. So they were hand drawn slides with markers. And we would use them to present on overhead projectors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember the days of school with overhead projectors and chalkboards. Yeah. But then when you entered work, it's all digital and email and phones, and you can start to see where the differences lie, can't you, when you talk about someone who has only ever seen a phone screen, and then someone who comes from the days of chalk and ink and paper, and how that can cause a clash or a lack of understanding maybe within teams.
Exactly. And also I think the pace of change has completely changed. Yeah, if that makes sense, the space of the pace of change. And the younger generation, they're used to this this fast-paced environment, and they really value diversity and integrating technology very quickly. They're really ahead of the game, and they love learning and growing, and they really want to find a sense of purpose and aligning their social and environmental values to the job that they're doing. They're not doing it just for the paycheck. And so, yeah, even finding how to motivate people from different generations is not an easy task, just because you have such wide diversity of values and ways.
And what are some of the challenges that you are noticing or reading about in the workplace?
So what I'm noticing is, for example, the difference in also receiving and giving feedback. The younger generations, especially the Generation Z, they want a lot of feedback, but I mean almost daily feedback. So it's this thing of every 6 months we're going to sit down and have a review. Doesn't work for them. They want constant feedback. They want they like that communication. They want to understand what's working, what's not working. They want to be able to explore new ways of doing things, reiterating. So that I find is, this leader that came to me thought it was quite exhausting, and then understood that he has to integrate it into just the way that they do things a bit better. And feedback isn't, a lot of people, when they think of feedback, they think, oh, you have something negative to tell me. But feedback can be actually very empowering and very, based on positive feedback as well. So you can say what's working really well, what you appreciate about that person, and then maybe 1 or 2 areas of development, as opposed to feedback being, I'm telling you everything that's wrong with you. So also understanding how feedback needs to be given. And the other thing I've noticed is how the younger generation, they're not as loyal to companies as maybe my generation was, or the previous generation, like the baby boomers. So if they're not happy, they will get up and quit and move on. They do not have a problem, hopping around after a year and a half and changing companies. So that's another thing. It's very difficult to, keep them long-term if they are not happy and engaged. And that's an issue now, because, we need to find new ways of engaging them and motivating them and making sure that they're happy and growing both professionally and personally as well. And they're able to, they feel connected and secure and valued and put in the condition to be able to express what they know. And even though they've just joined, once upon a time in my age, when a new joiner joined, it was like they almost had to just be quiet and be there and observe how it was done. Now it's different. They want to participate right from the get-go, and rightly so, because they have a fresh perspective on things, and they see things from a completely different viewpoint, and they'll pick up things that you, who's been there maybe for 10, 15 years, won't even realize anymore, and they pick it up really quickly. So that, I think, is a really good way to just broaden your horizons and quickly learn and understand how you can move to that level of excellence. It's creating that learning organization that I think is really important in today's world. And Tom, so tell me, have you had any coaches, any clients talk about the fact that they're finding it a challenge to work with people from different generations? Is that coming up for you as well?
I haven't had it specifically said because it's different generations. but I've certainly had managers come to me who are managing a team and having to adapt the management style, the way they do things to people in their team. Now, of course, everyone has different personality traits, and it's not purely a generational thing, but you can certainly there's a few correlations there when you kind of casually look at it. So yeah, I've definitely noticed it. And I've also had clients, younger clients, yeah, who would maybe, yeah, you might work with them in a slightly different way than you would someone else. But again, a lot of it I think is as a personality trait as well. So it's hard to say purely based on that. But certainly managers adapting and being flexible, finding different ways to motivate their teams, I would say is something that's a challenge that I'd regularly see. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I noticed that, for example, these long meetings that my generation was used to, they don't work. I mean, they want stand-up meetings, they want quick check-ins. I mean, already a meeting, if it lasts an hour, is too long. I remember being in meetings for 6 or 7 hours. And then can you imagine all the backlog that you need to deal with in terms of email? So they want really quick, snappy meetings, very engaging, ideally. They're also much more sort of visual and video based as well. So if you need to engage with them or present to them, engage with them, the use of video and images and infographic is really important, just because they are not used to reading all this long text. That's something else I've noticed. As I've also noticed the impact of COVID, the pandemic that's had on them, and their need for security. My generation had it from the 9/11. That was our big thing that really disrupted sort of our sense of security, was the 9/11 and then the war on terror that followed. For the latest generation, I think is really COVID, and also for everybody that was working at the time, it's now understanding and appreciating, I think, this hybrid. Most people anyway, somewhere in the middle, they like to be able to go to the office every now and again, or to see people every now and again, but mostly also be able to work flexibly. That seems to be the sort of a good balance, even though there is very much a sort of a war going on between leaders that absolutely want everybody back in the office and others that are like, no, we're going to give them full flexibility. I think that a good average, a sort of a bit of a hybrid, and hybrid doesn't necessarily mean every week you need to do 50-50. Hybrid could be you're away for a month, then you're back in the office for whatever, 2-3 days a week or 1 day per week, and then whatever works for you, I think, whatever works for the company. But hybrid is giving a bit of flexibility so that you don't completely lose out on that connection and that sense of belonging that is very difficult to create if you don't actually have a physical place that you can go to where you can actually see people and interact with people and have a coffee or a lunch or after dinner or after work drinks, or go to the pub or for aperitivos or whatever. I think it's a big part of creating those deeper connections, at a human level.
Somewhat related to that as well, I've a friend in a workplace recently I was talking to who had mentioned the fact that a lot of their new graduates that they were bringing in just didn't have like social manners as such. They would say, let's put it broadly, like just respect of others and like acting like adults, like almost saying that they were kind of teenagers or children just in a workplace. And I was saying to this person, like, have you actually thought about the impact that COVID has had on the way that they've grown up as well. Because these graduates, this was right after COVID or whatever, they would have gone from pretty much from school to then going to uni at home with their parents, to then coming into a workplace. And they've missed out on that whole becoming an adult kind of phase at university, at least with a lot of people, with not everybody, of course, but that whole phase of life when you kind of just, like, from my perspective anyway, you kind of just grow up quite rapidly and you learn how to be an adult around other people, also figuring out how to be an adult. But instead they're now just doing that phase in a workplace, in a professional setting. And I think it almost puts a bit of a, it's on the workplace now as well, maybe to teach and show and educate as well, rather than just battle or complain. It's all comes down back to empathy, I think, from both sides. Yeah,
absolutely. They're interesting what you say about the these sort of the adolescents, because adolescents, actually, I didn't know about this. I was reading up on doing some research the other day. It goes from about 11 to 25 years of age. That's actually sort of with the adolescent phase. So we also hit the ones at university. What you really want to do in that phase, the one thing you need is you need your independence and you need your friends. Two things that were taken away from those kids during COVID for 1-2 years. I mean, in Italy, it was, it even went for a bit longer. So what's happened is it's just delayed everything. It's delayed that development. And so what you say makes perfect sense. I mean, they come to the workplace and they don't really know how to be young adults because they're still finishing off being older adolescents. And I've also noticed this because I work for a management consulting company where I do their leadership training and I'm part of the faculty there. And one of the things that we need to really look out for are exactly that. I mean, it's Generation Z, that so young people that actually came to the company during COVID times. And so for the first 2 years, they did not have that experience of going out with the partner, for example, and experiencing, or the engagement manager, and experiencing what it was like interacting with the client directly. So they missed out on that phase completely. And that is something that we need to mitigate. And, by doing some training and by doing some role playing. And but it's all comes down to knowing how to create that trust that's with other people, that goes beyond the screen. So creating that credibility, reliability, but also that intimacy, I think, that intimacy and that confidence, which is not easy to build when you are on a screen, but also when you're separated from your colleagues and everybody else is on a separate screen.
Yeah. What sort of adaptations do you see, or do you think leaders could make to tackle it?
I think it's a lot of listening and asking what it is that they need, I think, without necessarily making assumptions. I think that we need to ask them, what is it that you need, you feel you want, you feel could make you more productive, but happier and more engaged and more fulfilled? I don't think we know. We need to ask them and keep asking them. And then based on what they say, try to make those adaptations. I mean,
it's interesting. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm saying the things that seem to come up time and time again are, the fact that they really want to find significance in what they're doing. They don't want to just do a task. They want to understand why they're doing it, what they're doing it for, how they're they want to make a positive impact. And they also want to positive impact in terms of, actually having a significant in what they're doing as a role, but also in terms of the bigger picture. So they're very aware of the social issues and the environmental issues as well. So they're looking at how they can contribute, whether it's on a voluntary basis, whether it's through ESG programs or CSR programs, or whether it's actually part of their job and integrated into their actual job. They're very, very aware and sensitive to the needs.
Mm.
And so sort of this activism, would say. Yeah. And they're also used to, I think, they've had access to all this information and misinformation as well. And I think for them to be guided in terms of understanding how to make sense of all the misinformation that they've been exposed to since they've had access to these phones and social media, and to be able to differentiate between actual real life and what they see happening on these social media platforms.
Yeah. A couple of points there that I picked up on as well that I think could help people who are leaders in organizations or managers who are in teams and they're struggling with this is on the technology side of things. I think is interesting. That's one of them that you just mentioned. We have a policy, or I have a policy certainly for my teams, for my in the company at least, to provide what we call kind of consumer level technology, in-house. Like if an app or a software you provide isn't something that they'd want to use outside of work, then it's just not going to land and it's going to cause frustrations. And you want it to be on the level of an Instagram or a Facebook or whatever, WhatsApp, and there's plenty of good tools that go out there and do that. So we've put our employee handbook, for example, on an online platform which is interactive, and you can click on it and pull wheels around and explore it rather than sit and read. We have the long document as well that can go alongside it for a legal basis, but we also have a fun and engaging way of actually communicating information to people, which I think is really important, to bring in that consumer level technology to the company. And most places are doing that these days. And something else you mentioned there. So again, on the CSR side, again at the company that I work with, we've just enabled two of our, I guess they would be again on the cusp of Gen Z millennials. They'd be, I wouldn't know exactly their ages, but they're on that cusp. And we've let them design our own CSR program for the company. So they've designed a 5-day volunteering program whereby you can volunteer and use the same skills you'd use for our clients, but you can use them now for charity. So they work lining up charities for us, and then people who want to can go and do that work, but you're not forcing on people at the same time. I think choice is a really important thing in all of this as well.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I was just thinking of when you were talking earlier, and it's just some of the language as well, it was all them and they, and it's kind of almost this Gen Z is the naughty child, like the them, and what do they want? But how do you think we could approach it's language that we hear all across the media, what do they want and what can we do for them? But what about how could the more elder generations adapt to them rather than Gen Z's adapting to the workplace? Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's really valuing them from the get-go, and they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to be able to contribute right from the get-go. And they're very visual, as I said, they're very digital. And so I think that they can really help to propel change. I mean, they're all about change and evolution all the time. So it could seem a bit scary, especially if they end up in a company where there's people there that have been there for quite some time. And it's like, but this is how we've been doing things. And you need to kind of, before you have a say, you need to adapt to the way you need to learn our way of doing it. I mean, that's just frustrating for them and really a waste of their time and their skills and their energy. They don't want they don't want to be doing that. They want to be contributing from the get-go, and they want to be growing as well. They want to be growing professionally, but also personally as well. They have a hunger for learning, for contributing, and for growing. So, I mean, I see them as extremely, I mean, engaging and interesting. I coach at the business school here, so that's where I get my youngest clients from. They tend to be around 25, 26 years old. They're MBA students. And it's just amazing how, I mean, it's true these are MBA students, so they're quite a sort of a niche, if you like, of the market. But it's incredible. I mean, they're so optimized in the way that they manage their life. and you know, they probably need help in also, I think, just understanding that they, you know, the work dynamics and the politics, they're not really used to that, how in a company and in an organization, all that, there's also that part that counts in terms of hierarchy. They tend to be quite unhierarchical, and that's when you hear, you know, these new types of managing companies, which is more of a participative leadership. And again, the leader is not somebody that's older than you and that has more experience than you, but it's simply somebody that knows how to lead people and put people in the conditions to be able to express what they know how to do. So I think that's where the leadership needs to change, because leadership, you know, I was speaking to a coachee of mine. She's really young. She's not even 40. And she is leading a group of 50 people in Belgium. Some of them are much older than she is. And she got deeply criticized. You know, who is this person? She has no experience in sales and no experience in this and no experience in that. But she is a really, really good leader. And now they've got used to her. They absolutely love her because she, you know, she knows how to put people in the conditions to be able to do their work and find the resources and navigate all the politics within the organization, but really puts the team in a condition to kind of grow as a team and operate as a team, but then also the individuals themselves can find a way to contribute. And they also work on special projects aside from their main tasks. They also have some side projects to help with that personal growth as well.
Right. If there was a leader out there with a team, an intergenerational team of different generations, what would you say to them?
Embrace it, and you're lucky. So I think that's going to help you to excel. Just understand how to tap into that huge potential that you have. So whether it's intergenerational or, you know, I'm all about the diversity and equity and inclusion and different genders and neurodiversity, all that. The more diverse the group, the more chances you have of building up to a level of excellence that you couldn't possibly even have imagined before, just by having like-minded individuals. So there's going to be a bit of conflict to manage, but a bit of conflict, the right amount of conflict is healthy. You need to have the right amount of conflict. If you can't just have harmony all the time, otherwise people are not going to grow. You don't want to have too much conflict because then you generate too much toxicity and too much stress. You have to have the right amount of conflict, and then sets up systems and behaviors and values in order to manage that conflict. That's where you need to be clear on creating a learning organization where mistakes are shared and everybody can learn from them, and psychological safety comes in. It's really important. It's not about punishing people, but it's really about having the mindset that we're all here with a very clear purpose, and we need to help each other to reach that purpose and learn from each other, and also make it fun in the process.
Yeah. I think those are some great words to finish today's episode on.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So Tom, you're zillennial. I love that.
I've been told I am. Yeah, I'm not one for labels generally in life, but yeah. So let's go with it for this. Yeah.
Okay. So we can tell our viewers and our listeners just to, if you've got any questions or anything to contribute, any feedback, any insights, we'd love you to share them with us. We're always keen to learn and have a bit of that engagement. And then you can always reach out to me and to Tom and I with any questions you may have, or for a discovery call on how coaching could help you navigate this intergenerational workplace that we currently have right now.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Beatrice. I've enjoyed, as ever, our chat today, and hope you all enjoyed that at home, in the car, wherever you are.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Bye, Tom.
Bye.